Hello and welcome back to our journey through the history of the English language. Last time, we saw how the Norman conquest brought French to England. But how did English survive and thrive? Let's find out. After the Norman invasion, the French-speaking rulers slowly began to see England as their true home. An interesting thing happened. They started to feel that the French spoken in England wasn't quite as good as the French spoken in Paris. This, strangely enough, made them feel a little prouder of their English roots and the English language itself. For the ordinary people, French was never really part of their lives. A poet writing in the late 1200s noted that almost no common person knew French. English was the language of the land, a source of pride connected to their history and identity. Around the year 1300, a poet even translated a book into English, specifically so that common people could understand and enjoy it. Then, a major conflict erupted that would change everything: the 100 Years' War, which raged between England and France from 1337 to 1453. This long war fueled a powerful sense of national identity in England. Being English meant speaking English. The language became a symbol of who they were, distinct from their French rivals. But another, more tragic event also played a crucial role: the Black Death. This horrific plague swept through England between 1348 and 1375, wiping out a huge portion of the population. Among the victims were many highly educated churchmen and teachers, most of whom spoke French or Latin. Their positions were filled by less educated people who only spoke English. At the same time, the plague created a massive labor shortage. With fewer workers available, ordinary people found they had more power. They could demand better pay and working conditions. As the common folk gained more importance in society, so did their language. English started to become the language of power. More and more, it was used in government because fewer officials actually understood French anymore. A landmark moment came in 1362, when English was used for the first time in Parliament, the country's main ruling body. Then, in 1399, Henry IV ascended to the throne. He was the very first king to add English as his mother tongue since before the Normans arrived. Over the next century, the shift was complete. English replaced French in homes, in schools, and across all levels of government. It even became the standard for personal communication. By 1450, if you were writing a letter, you'd most likely write it in English, not French or Latin. English had not only survived, it had won. But it was a very different language from what it had been before. This new version of the language is what we call Middle English. In the 400 years following the Norman conquest, English underwent its most dramatic transformation ever. The grammar became much simpler. For instance, all those complicated word endings for nouns, adjectives, and pronouns that were common in Old English, most of them disappeared. Instead, the order of words in a sentence: subject, verb, object became the primary way to show meaning. And then there were the words themselves. Between 1100 and 1500, thousands of French words flooded into the English vocabulary. Many of these are words we use every single day. They touched every aspect of life. For the home, we got words like blanket, chair, and dinner. In the arts and sciences, words like dance, music, and poet appeared. For law and government, words such as crime, judge, and prison were adopted. Even the natural world got new names, like flower, forest, and ocean. Sometimes, a French word would completely replace an Old English one. For example, the French word people pushed out the Old English equivalent. But often, both words survived, each taking on a slightly different shade of meaning. Think about the Old English word ask and the French word demand. They mean similar things, but we use them in very different situations. You can still see the social divide from this era in our vocabulary today. The words for animals in the field, like cow, sheep, or pig, are from Old English, used by the Anglo-Saxon farmers. But the words for the meat served on the dinner table, beef, mutton, and pork, are from French, used by the Norman lords. It's a fascinating linguistic echo of a class-divided society. When we talk about Middle English, one name stands above all others: Geoffrey Chaucer. Living in London from about 1343 to 1400, Chaucer was not just a brilliant poet, but also an important government official. He wrote in the dialect of the East Midlands, which was the language spoken in the influential Triangle of London, Oxford, and Cambridge. His writing is filled with these newly adopted French words. His most famous work, of course, is the Canterbury Tales *. Written in the 1390s, it is a wonderful collection of stories told by a diverse group of ordinary people on a pilgrimage to Canterbury. Chaucer's genius was in capturing these characters so vividly, right down to the way they spoke. He even pokes fun at the slightly awkward French accent some English people had at the time. His work showed everyone that English was a rich, powerful, and expressive language, ready for a new era. The end of the 15th century marked a new beginning for English. The 16th century was a time of incredible change across Europe, what we now call the Renaissance. Explorers were sailing to the Americas, Asia, and Africa, discovering new lands and new cultures. Science and art were flourishing. With all these new ideas and discoveries, the English language had to expand. It needed more words to describe this incredible new world. But the single biggest change came from a machine. In 1476, a man named William Caxton brought the first printing press to London. This invention revolutionized everything. Before printing, every single book had to be copied by hand. A slow, expensive process. The printing press made it possible to produce thousands of copies quickly and cheaply. Suddenly, books were accessible to more people than ever before. However, this created a new problem: which version of English should be printed? The language was still a patchwork of different regional dialects, with varied spelling and pronunciation. Caxton himself wrote about how different the English spoken in one part of the country was from another. He and other printers had to make a choice. They settled on the East Midlands dialect, the language of London, the universities, and the government. This decision was monumental. As more and more books were printed in this London-based English, it slowly became the standard, laying the foundation for the modern English we speak today. It was the beginning of a unified English language, ready to take on the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible linguistic journey. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you next time.